Today, let's explore together how to approach feelings of hopelessness and discover scientifically backed ways to rebuild joy in your life. If you've been feeling like happiness has permanently left your world, that there's no point in trying anymore, or that the future holds nothing but more pain, please know that you're not alone in this experience. Many people find themselves in this difficult place at some point in their lives, and there are evidence-based pathways that can help guide you back toward hope and meaning. What we'll discuss today isn't about quick fixes or unrealistic promises. Instead, we'll look at current research findings that suggest our brains have a remarkable capacity for healing and renewal, even when we feel most hopeless. This exploration might provide some support as you navigate this challenging time. Current research from the National Institute of Mental Health has revealed fascinating insights about how hopelessness affects our brains and, more importantly, how we can work with our brain's natural healing processes. A comprehensive study published in 2023 in the International Journal of Cognitive Therapy analyzed hopelessness as a specific cognitive state with identifiable components. The researchers found that hopelessness involves three main elements: dismal expectations about the future, blocked goal-directed thinking, and feelings of helplessness about changing our circumstances. Brain imaging studies show that when people experience hopelessness, there's reduced activity in the prefrontal cortex, particularly in areas responsible for future planning and generating positive expectations. However, this research also revealed something encouraging. These same studies found that targeted interventions can help restore activity in these brain regions within 6 to 8 weeks of consistent practice. A meta-analysis combining data from multiple studies involving over 2,000 participants found that people practicing hope-building techniques showed significant improvements. Specifically, participants experienced an average of 67% improvement in depression scores and 73% reduction in hopelessness measures compared to control groups who didn't receive these interventions. Neuroscience research has also revealed that when we actively practice hope-building activities, it activates our brain's reward system, specifically increasing dopamine production in an area called the ventral tegmental area. This is the same region that responds to other positive experiences, suggesting that hope itself can become rewarding for our brains over time. The research suggests that comparing different therapeutic approaches, future-oriented therapy combined with behavioral activation tends to be more effective than traditional cognitive therapy alone, showing about 34% better outcomes in hopelessness recovery rates. These findings provide a scientific foundation for understanding that recovery from hopelessness isn't just possible, but follows predictable patterns that researchers can measure and study. Now let's explore some practical methods that current research suggests might be helpful. These approaches are based on the scientific evidence we just discussed, and they're designed to work with your brain's natural capacity for healing and adaptation. The first method is called future-oriented visualization. This involves spending about 10 minutes each day practicing the skill of imagining positive future scenarios. You might start very small, perhaps picturing one positive moment that could happen tomorrow, like enjoying a warm cup of tea or seeing sunlight through your window. The key is to make these scenarios specific and achievable rather than grand or dramatic. Neuroscience research suggests this practice helps rebuild the neural pathways associated with positive expectation, and studies indicate these pathways can begin to strengthen within 3 to 4 weeks of consistent practice. The reason this method works has to do with neuroplasticity, which is our brain's ability to form new neural connections throughout our lives. When we deliberately practice positive future thinking, we're essentially exercising the brain regions responsible for hope and planning. Just as physical exercise strengthens muscles, this mental exercise appears to strengthen our capacity for optimistic thinking. The second approach is behavioral activation scheduling. This involves planning one meaningful activity each day, even if it's just for 15 minutes. Research suggests starting with activities that used to bring you joy, even if they don't feel appealing right now. This might seem counterintuitive, but studies show that action often precedes motivation rather than the other way around. When we engage in purposeful activities, even when we don't feel like it, our brains often respond by gradually rebuilding the neurochemical patterns associated with interest and pleasure. Scientific timing research indicates that scheduling these activities in the morning tends to produce the highest neurochemical benefits. This appears to be related to our natural cortisol patterns, which peak in the morning and can enhance the positive effects of meaningful activities when we work with this natural rhythm rather than against it. The third method involves cognitive restructuring, which means learning to identify and gently challenge hopeless thought patterns. The research suggests using what's called the ABC model, where A stands for the antecedent or trigger, B for the belief or thought, and C for the consequence or how we feel. For example, when the thought, "nothing will ever change," arises, we might practice replacing it with something like, "change happens gradually through consistent small actions." Studies indicate that practicing this approach about 3 times daily tends to be most effective for reshaping these thought patterns. The psychological mechanism behind this approach involves what researchers call cognitive flexibility. When we're experiencing hopelessness, our thinking often becomes rigid and focused on negative possibilities. By deliberately practicing alternative ways of thinking, we're essentially training our brains to consider multiple perspectives rather than getting stuck in one negative viewpoint. The fourth approach focuses on social connection restoration. Research demonstrates that loneliness significantly amplifies feelings of hopelessness, with some studies suggesting it can increase hopelessness by as much as 340%. The encouraging news is that even brief positive social interactions can trigger the release of oxytocin, which tends to counter the neurochemical patterns associated with despair. This doesn't necessarily mean having deep conversations or making major social commitments. Sometimes it might be as simple as greeting a neighbor, calling a friend, or participating in a community activity once a week. It's important to understand some common challenges people face when trying these approaches. Many people expect immediate dramatic changes, but research suggests that recovery from hopelessness typically occurs gradually over 6 to 12 weeks. This timeline can feel frustrating, but it's actually a sign that real, lasting change is happening in your brain. Another common challenge is skipping behavioral activation when motivation feels low. Research consistently shows that action tends to precede motivation, not the other way around. This means we often need to take action first, and motivation follows, rather than waiting to feel motivated before taking action. People also sometimes focus only on making large life changes, but studies suggest that small daily victories are actually more effective for building momentum and creating lasting change. These small victories help reinforce positive neural pathways and gradually build our confidence and sense of capability. For maintaining these practices over time, research suggests several strategies that tend to be helpful. Tracking small daily improvements, perhaps using a simple mood monitoring app or journal, can help you notice gradual changes that might otherwise go unrecognized. Creating accountability through scheduled check-ins with trusted friends or family members can provide support and encouragement. And celebrating micro-achievements, even very small positive changes, helps reinforce the positive neural pathways we're working to strengthen. To summarize what we've discussed today, I'd like to highlight 6 key points that current research suggests are most important to remember. First, hope involves specific brain circuits that can be strengthened within weeks through consistent practice, not years. This gives us a realistic time frame for expecting gradual improvements. Second, future thinking practice helps rebuild neural pathways that may have been damaged by prolonged hopelessness, essentially giving our brains the exercise they need to function more optimally. Third, small daily actions can generate powerful neurochemical shifts, meaning we don't need to make dramatic life changes to begin experiencing benefits. Fourth, social connection appears to accelerate recovery by increasing effectiveness significantly, making relationships an important part of the healing process. Fifth, morning activation tends to maximize our natural cortisol benefits, suggesting that timing can enhance the effectiveness of our efforts. And sixth, celebrating small wins helps reinforce positive changes in our brain, making future positive experiences more likely. These approaches aren't magic solutions, and they require patience and consistency. But the research suggests that they can provide genuine support for people working to rebuild hope and joy in their lives. Your brain has remarkable healing capabilities, and with time and gentle persistence, many people find that feelings of hopelessness can gradually transform into something more manageable and eventually into genuine hope. The journey from hopelessness to hope isn't always linear, and it's perfectly normal to have difficult days even as you're making progress. What matters is maintaining gentle persistence with yourself and remembering that healing happens gradually, often in ways that are too subtle to notice day by day but become apparent when we look back over weeks and months. If today's discussion provided any support for your journey, please hit the like button to help others who might benefit from this information find this video. If you'd like to continue learning about mental health and evidence-based approaches to well-being together, please consider subscribing to our channel. May your heart feel a little lighter today, and thank you for listening until the end.